You can buy a newspaper nearly everywhere. Or check out the latest headlines on your smartphone. And while the news may be easy to access, journalists are finding themselves in courtrooms, behind bars, intimidated, even silenced, according to a report by the independent watchdog organization Freedom House. Vice President for Analysis, Vanessa Tucker.
Unfortunately, the news is very bad. Press freedom suffered a global decline in 2014. It's the worst decline in a decade. Things are getting bad, and they're getting bad even faster than they have in the past.
According to Freedom of the Press 2015, Mexico intimidated journalists and passed a controversial communications law. While much of North America was rated as having a free press, much of Latin America was either partially free or not free. And the United States was criticized for the rough treatment of journalists by police during protests in Ferguson, Missouri. In the Asia-Pacific region, only 5% of the population had access to free media, while the rest were split evenly between partly free or not free. China's score was the worst since the 1990s, as authorities jailed journalists and tightened control over media outlets.
One of the areas that we noted that's a real problem globally and regionally right now is the impact of actors like China on their neighbors. So we saw that actions that China took had a negative impact, of course, in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, and some of the other neighboring countries.
In Syria, the brutal civil war created grave dangers for journalists. The report says just 2% of people in the Middle East and North Africa live in free media environments, while the vast majority live in countries labeled not free. In sub-Saharan Africa, only 3% of the population is exposed to information from free media. More than half of the press is partly free, and nearly 40% are not free. The Freedom House report says the Eurasia region's average score remained the worst in the world. More than 80% of the media was judged as not free, and less than 20% partly free. In Russia, the report says there was a crackdown on independent voices inside the country and in neighboring nations.
One of the big areas of troubling impact that we saw was in propaganda. So completely fabricated propaganda such that people inside of Russia have essentially no idea what's going on in conflicts like that in Ukraine.
Freedom House says the growing threats to the media are a stark challenge to democratic values around the globe. Meredith Buel, VOA News, Washington.